My name is Blaze Wilson, 24 years old, and I worked 3 jobs to put myself through college because my parents refused financial support, claiming it would build my independence. Meanwhile, they fully funded my sister Harper's education, apartment, and lifestyle without hesitation. The irony: my father just called his voice uncharacteristically humble, asking for my help to save the family business that's now circling the drain. Before I dive into how my journey of self-reliance, ironically, made me the family's last hope, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Hit that subscribe button and stick around to see how the tables turned, in the most unexpected way. Growing up in an upper-middle-class neighborhood in Boston, Massachusetts, I never wanted for basic necessities. Our 4-bedroom colonial house, with its manicured lawn and swimming pool in the backyard, was the envy of many of my friends. From the outside looking in, the Wilson family appeared to have it all: financial stability, health, and happiness. But appearances can be deceiving. My father, Richard Wilson, built his technology consulting firm from scratch. Starting in our garage with nothing but a computer and determination, he grew Wilson Tech Solutions into a respected regional company with dozens of employees and an impressive client list. Dad never let us forget his humble beginnings or the value of hard work. Nothing worth having comes easily, he'd say usually, while recounting how he worked 60-hour weeks in the early days. His favorite phrase was, "Self-reliance is the foundation of success." At dinner, he'd lecture about the dangers of dependence government handouts and the participation trophy generation. Mom Margaret was a different story. A former elementary school teacher who quit to raise Harper and me, she was warm and supportive, but completely deferred to Dad on financial decisions. "Your father knows best about money matters," she'd say, whenever I questioned their decisions. Her quiet compliance only reinforced Dad's authority in our household. The different treatment between my sister Harper and me began subtly. When we were younger, it manifested in small ways. Harper getting slightly more expensive birthday gifts, or being allowed to quit piano lessons when she found them challenging, while I was forced to commit to my responsibilities when I wanted to quit baseball. As we grew older, the disparities became more pronounced and impossible to ignore. When I turned 16, I spent the entire summer mowing lawns, washing cars, and stocking shelves at the local grocery store to save $2,000 for my first car, a rusted 15-year-old Honda Civic that frequently broke down. 6 months later, on Harper's 16th birthday, Mom and Dad surprised her with a brand new Toyota Corolla, complete with custom seat covers and a premium sound system. When I questioned the fairness, Dad said, "You appreciate your car more because you worked for it. That's a valuable lesson." Family vacations further highlighted the differential treatment. During our trip to Disney World, when I was 17 and Harper was 15, she received an unlimited souvenir budget while I was given a strict allowance. When she wanted to upgrade to the special Princess Breakfast experience, Dad immediately agreed. When I asked to attend the behind-the-scenes engineering tour, I was told I could pay for it myself if I really wanted to go. Despite the unfair treatment, I excelled in high school. As captain of the debate team, I led our school to the state championships 2 years in a row. On the track team, I wasn't a star athlete, but earned respectable times in middle-distance events through sheer determination. Academically, I maintained a 3.9 GPA while taking advanced placement courses in mathematics and physics. My guidance counselor said I had excellent prospects for college scholarships, though not enough for a full ride at the prestigious universities I dreamed of attending. The spring of my senior year was filled with excitement as college acceptance letters arrived. I got into several excellent schools, including Northwestern Boston University and my dream school, Cornell. Harper, 2 years behind me in school, watched with mild interest as I spread brochures across our dining table calculating costs and comparing programs. Cornell has the best engineering program, but Northwestern offered more financial aid, I told my parents over dinner one evening. "I think with your contribution and the scholarships I've received, Cornell might be possible if I work part-time during the school year." The silence that followed should have been my first warning. Mom stared at her plate while Dad cleared his throat. "About that, Blaze," he said, folding his napkin deliberately. "Your mother and I have been discussing your college education, And we've made a decision. That evening changed everything. My parents announced they would not be contributing a single dollar toward my college education. No tuition assistance, no help with books or housing, nothing. You're a man now, Blaze, Dad said firmly. Men need to forge their own path. This will build character and independence. Trust me, you'll thank us later. When I pointed out that college costs had skyrocketed since his day, making it nearly impossible to work through school without significant debt, he dismissed my concerns. Where there's a will, there's a way. I managed to build a business from nothing. Surely you can figure out how to get an education. The crushing blow came 2 years later, when Harper graduated high school. Despite her lower grades and minimal extracurricular activities, my parents fully funded her education at an expensive private university, bought her a newer car for the commute, and provided a generous monthly allowance for expenses. When Harper casually mentioned her financial arrangement during a family dinner, I nearly choked on my food. Wait, you're paying for everything. Her full tuition, housing, books. Harper is different, Mom said softly. She's more delicate and needs our support. She's a woman entering a challenging world, Dad added. It's our responsibility to give her a solid foundation. The double standard was breathtaking. I left the dinner table that night feeling betrayed and worthless in my parents' eyes. What had I done to deserve less love, less support, less opportunity? That question would haunt me throughout my college years. The financial reality of my situation forced me to decline my acceptance to Cornell. Instead, I enrolled at Massachusetts State University, and a decent school, with more affordable in-state tuition, but nowhere near the caliber of institution I had worked so hard to access. My dream of studying at an Ivy League school evaporated because of my father's character-building exercise. My first apartment was a cramped 2-bedroom unit shared with 3 other students, all of us squeezed in to minimize housing costs. My bedroom was actually a converted dining nook, separated from the living room by a hanging sheet. Privacy became a luxury I couldn't afford. While Harper moved into a modern apartment complex near her campus with a pool and fitness center, I showered in a bathroom with persistent mold issues and slept on a mattress I found on clearance. Working became as much a part of my college identity as studying. My freshman year began with a job in the campus cafeteria, serving food to classmates for minimum wage, plus a meal per shift, which helped reduce my food expenses. The hours were convenient, but insufficient for my financial needs. By the middle of my first semester, I added a second job as a night security guard at a storage facility, working from 11 at night until 5 in the morning, 3 nights per week. My daily schedule was punishing. A typical Tuesday looked like this. Classes from 8 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon. Cafeteria work from 3 until 7 in the evening. 2 hours of studying, then security guard duty from 11 until 5, followed by an hour of sleep before morning classes began again. On weekends, I picked up delivery driver shifts for a local restaurant. Sleep deprivation became my constant companion. The academic challenges mounted quickly. Engineering courses demanded full attention and extensive study time, neither of which I could provide while working over 30 hours weekly. During my first physics exam, I fell asleep mid-question, waking up only when another student dropped their calculator. My professor's concerned email afterward only increased my stress. Your work shows potential, but your performance doesn't match what I believe you're capable of achieving. Is everything okay? Everything was not okay, but admitting my struggles felt like confirming my father's assessment that I couldn't handle independence. Pride kept me from seeking help until my sophomore year, when my academic advisor placed me on academic probation following a particularly difficult semester. The one bright spot during that dark period was meeting Sophia Martinez in my differential equations class. Unlike most students who rarely noticed the perpetually exhausted guy in the back row, Sophia made efforts to include me in study groups and save notes when I inevitably missed classes due to work conflicts. You look like you're running on fumes, she said one evening, sliding a cup of coffee across the library table. Want to talk about it? Something about her genuine concern broke through my walls. That night I told her everything. My parents' refusal to help, the blatant favoritism toward my sister, the crushing workload. Sophia's outrage on my behalf was the first validation I'd received that the situation was genuinely unfair. "That's not building character. That's just cruel," she said, "especially when they're supporting your sister completely." Our friendship gradually evolved into romance, providing emotional support I desperately needed. Sophia's parents weren't wealthy, but they welcomed me into their home for holidays when returning to my parents' house became too painful. Her father, a construction foreman, even offered me better-paying weekend work when he could. Another lifeline appeared in the form of Damon Rodriguez, my roommate during junior year, after I moved to slightly better accommodations. Damon noticed my exhaustion one morning after a night shift and mentioned his brother's company needed weekend warehouse help at almost double my security guard wages. That job change alone allowed me to drop the delivery driving and reclaim a few precious hours for studying. "Dude, you're the most determined person I've ever met," Damon told me, after learning my situation. "But everyone needs help sometimes. Let people who care about you actually help." His words were a revelation. Perhaps accepting targeted help from friends wasn't the same as the dependence my father warned against. Perhaps interdependence was different from entitlement. Professor Marcus Jenkins became another crucial supporter. After I barely passed his advanced engineering materials course, he called me to his office. "Mr. Wilson, your test answers show remarkable insight when you're awake enough to complete them," he said bluntly. "What's preventing you from reaching your potential?" His directness prompted honesty. I explained my financial situation and work schedule. Rather than sympathy, he offered pragmatic assistance. "I need a research assistant, 10 hours weekly. It pays better than cafeteria work, looks excellent on graduate school applications, and the schedule is flexible around your classes." The research position became my academic salvation, providing relevant work experience while reducing my overall working hours. Professor Jenkins also became a mentor, offering the fatherly guidance that Richard Wilson had withheld. Despite these supports, the physical toll of my schedule was unmistakable. By junior year, I had lost 15 pounds from my already lean frame. Dark circles became a permanent feature under my eyes. Insomnia paradoxically plagued me despite constant exhaustion, my body too stressed to properly rest during the few hours available. Anxiety attacks became frequent, especially before exams, or when unexpected expenses arose. Holiday visits home only worsened my mental state. While I worked multiple jobs for basic survival, Harper's college experience included spring break trips to Cancun, a shopping allowance for designer clothes, and membership in an expensive sorority. Her social media showcased the college experience I had been denied: football games, campus events, and study abroad in Barcelona during her sophomore year. Barcelona was amazing. Harper gushed during Christmas dinner my junior year. "Dad, the business class ticket made such a difference on that long flight. Thanks again." I pushed mashed potatoes around my plate, thinking about how I'd picked up an extra cleaning shift at the engineering building that morning before driving home just to afford gas money for the trip. "You're welcome, sweetheart," Dad replied. "Education is about more than just classrooms." When Mom asked about my semester, I provided the sanitized version, Dean's List. Despite challenges the research position my growing relationship with Sophia. I omitted the nights spent studying in the 24-hour library because we couldn't afford adequate heating in our apartment, or how I'd ration meals toward the end of the semester when my security guard hours were cut. "Sounds like you're managing well, Dad," nodded with approval. "See, the struggle is building resilience. You'll appreciate your degree more, having earned it entirely yourself." His words stoked a slow-burning resentment. This wasn't about building character. It was about arbitrary standards applied unequally between his children. But rather than confront him, I channeled that resentment into determination. I would succeed not because of his lesson, but despite it. Against considerable odds, I graduated with honors. The commencement ceremony was bittersweet. Pride in my accomplishment mixed with awareness of how much harder I'd had to work compared to peers with family support. My parents and Harper attended offering congratulations, as though my success validated, rather than condemned their approach. "See, you did it all on your own," Dad said, clapping my shoulder. "That's something to be proud of." I nodded, too emotionally exhausted to point out the absurdity of his pride in an unnecessary hardship he had imposed. Professor Jenkins, who attended the engineering department's separate ceremony, offered more meaningful recognition. Most students with your academic ability coast through on natural talent, he said. You had to develop extraordinary discipline and work ethic. Those qualities will take you further than raw intelligence ever could. His words proved prophetic. Within 2 weeks of graduation, I received a job offer from Diana Reynolds, CEO of Reynolds Innovation, a growing tech startup in Boston. My research with Professor Jenkins had involved materials relevant to their product development, and my unusual combination of practical experience and academic knowledge made me an attractive candidate despite my non-prestigious degree. Your hands-on approach is exactly what we're looking for, Diana told me during the interview. Too many new graduates have theory, but no practical application skills. You've clearly bridged that gap. My starting salary was modest by industry standards, but felt like unimaginable wealth after years of poverty-level existence. The company's collaborative culture and Diana's mentorship accelerated my professional development. Unlike my father's sink or swim philosophy, Diana believed in providing resources and support to enable peak performance. Good leaders don't throw people into the deep end to see if they drown, she told me, during a performance review. They teach proper swimming techniques, then gradually move to deeper water. With consistent income, I implemented financial discipline, learned through years of scarcity. While classmates splurged on luxury apartments and new vehicles, I maintained modest living expenses and focused on eliminating student loan debt. The $67,000 in loans that had loomed over me throughout college began shrinking rapidly with aggressive payments. 18 months after graduation, I had paid off 40% of my debt and saved enough for a down payment on a small condominium in a developing neighborhood. At 23, I became a homeowner, while Harper continued living in our parents' pool house after graduation, saving money while working an entry-level marketing position secured through Dad's business connections. Professional recognition came faster than I anticipated. A materials improvement I developed for Reynolds Innovation's flagship product increased efficiency by 18% and became the subject of a patent application with my name listed as co-inventor. Industry publications featured our work, and I was invited to speak at a regional technology conference. Meanwhile, my relationship with Sophia flourished. After completing her bachelor's degree in biochemistry, she entered an accelerated nursing program determined to become a nurse practitioner. We supported each other's ambitions and grew together through the challenges. On her 23rd birthday, I proposed during a weekend trip to the Maine coastline. I can't offer a lavish wedding, I told her honestly. I'm still paying off student loans and building financial security. I don't need lavish, she replied, eyes shining with tears as she examined the modest engagement ring. I just need you. We began planning a small wedding, saving carefully for each expense without parental contribution. Sophia's parents offered what they could. Her mother would make the wedding cake, and her father volunteered to handle the simple decorations, but the bulk of the costs would fall to us. Beyond Sophia and her family, I had built meaningful connections with colleagues and maintained close friendship with Damon, who had become a successful physical therapist. Professor Jenkins continued mentoring me, professionally introducing me to industry contacts and recommending my work. These relationships formed a support network entirely separate from my family of origin. Family gatherings became exercises in cordial distance. I attended mandatory events like Thanksgiving and Christmas, maintained polite conversation, but shared little of substance about my life or achievements. Dad occasionally noticed articles about Reynolds Innovation and would mention them with a hint of surprise that suggested he hadn't expected my success. Saw your company in the Boston Business Journal, he mentioned during one Thanksgiving dinner. Sounds like they're doing well. We are, I replied, simply not elaborating on my role in that success. Mom began showing subtle signs of recognizing the unfairness of their approach. She sent occasional text messages checking on me and made efforts to engage with Sophia when we visited. During one kitchen conversation, while the rest of the family watched football, she almost apologized. Your father had strong ideas about raising you differently from Harper, she said quietly. I sometimes wondered if we were being too hard on you. It wasn't about hardness, Mom, I replied. It was about fairness, about equal love and support. She changed the subject, unwilling to confront the implications of my words, or her complicity in the disparity. My relationship with Harper became increasingly strained as we moved through our 20s. Her continued dependence on our parents contrasted sharply with my independence. When she needed a new car, Dad purchased it without question. When her apartment had maintenance issues, she moved back home temporarily for 6 months. Each instance reinforced the different standards to which we were held. "Must be nice to have your own place," Harper commented during a rare sibling lunch. "Dad's been talking about downsizing soon, so I might need to find somewhere else." "Most adults do live independently," I noted, unable to keep the edge from my voice. "It's part of growing up." Her expression showed genuine confusion. "Why are you always so serious about everything? Life doesn't have to be such a struggle, Blaze." Her words revealed how completely she missed the point. Her life wasn't easier because she approached it differently. It was easier because our parents had removed obstacles from her path while deliberately placing them in mine. By my 24th birthday, I had established myself professionally, was financially stable with growing investments, owned my home, and had built a relationship with a wonderful woman, all without family support. I had proven my father both right and wrong simultaneously. Yes, I could succeed independently, but not because that was the natural order of things. I succeeded because arbitrary hardship had forced exceptional effort that should never have been necessary. The first signs of trouble at Wilson Tech Solutions appeared in industry publications. A brief mention in Tech Business Weekly noted that the company had lost a significant government contract to a competitor. I might have missed it entirely if Diana hadn't mentioned it during our weekly development team meeting. "Wilson Tech Solutions just lost the Springfield Municipal Upgrade Project," she commented while discussing potential new clients. Apparently, Hayes Consulting undercut them by 20%. Might be worth reaching out to see if any of their clients are nervous about project continuity. The name Hayes triggered immediate recognition. Jackson Hayes had been my father's business rival for years, a frequent topic of dinner table complaints throughout my childhood. Their competition had always seemed professional rather than personal, but Dad had never hidden his disdain for Hayes' business practices. "Hayes cuts corners," he'd grumble after losing bids. "Clients learn the hard way that cheapest isn't best." I casually researched the situation that evening, discovering additional concerning signs. Wilson Tech Solutions had reduced their staff by 15% over the previous quarter. Their website showed no recent project announcements, and their social media accounts had grown strangely quiet after years of regular updates about new contracts and technology implementations. More troubling news followed. Thomas Anderson, my father's business partner for over 15 years, announced his departure from the company to establish his own consulting firm. Business insiders speculated about his reasons, with several suggesting financial instability at Wilson Tech Solutions. "Thomas Anderson's exit from Wilson Tech raises questions about the company's future," wrote one industry blogger. Sources close to the situation suggest cash flow problems and management disagreements preceded the split. While I hadn't worked in my father's business, I knew enough about the industry to understand that Anderson's departure was a significant blow. He had handled many of their largest client relationships and brought valuable technical expertise to the company. His loss would impact both operations and client confidence. Soon, business journals began using the word bankruptcy in articles about Wilson Tech Solutions. An analysis piece in the Boston Business Journal outlined the company's challenges in adapting to changing technology trends and increasing competition from larger firms offering integrated services. Industry sources suggest Wilson Tech Solutions may be considering bankruptcy protection following the loss of several key contracts and the departure of co-founder Thomas Anderson, the article stated. The company has declined to comment on its financial position. Despite these public signs of trouble, my sister Harper continued her lavish lifestyle, seemingly oblivious to any family financial constraints. Her Instagram showed weekend trips to New York, expensive restaurant meals, and shopping sprees at high-end boutiques. Either she remained completely unaware of our parents' business troubles, or she chose to ignore them. During a rare phone call with Mom, I carefully probed for information. "How are things going with Dad's business? I saw some industry news about changes there." Her hesitation spoke volumes. "Oh, you know your father. He's always dealing with business ups and downs. Nothing to worry about." Her forced cheerfulness contradicted reports I'd seen, but I didn't press further. If they wanted my concern or assistance, they would need to ask directly after years of emphasizing my separation from family resources. As Thanksgiving approached, Sophia and I debated whether to attend the family gathering. Professional commitments provided a convenient excuse, but curiosity about the actual state of family affairs won out. We arrived at my parents' house to find subtle but telling changes. The driveway contained only 2 vehicles rather than the usual 4, Mom's sensible sedan and Harper's newer SUV. Dad's luxury car was noticeably absent. Inside the house looked largely the same, though I noticed the expensive original artwork in the foyer had been replaced by less valuable prints. The traditional caterer who had prepared our holiday meals for years had been replaced by Mom's home cooking, which she explained as wanting a more personal touch this year. Throughout dinner, tension hung in the air. Dad, normally dominating conversation with business anecdotes and advice, remained uncharacteristically quiet. Mom worked too hard to maintain cheerful conversation, asking countless questions about our jobs and wedding plans. Harper complained about her boss's unreasonable expectations while remaining completely oblivious to the strained atmosphere. While helping Mom with dishes afterward, I noticed past due notices from the landscaping service and pool maintenance company partially hidden beneath a cookbook. Mom quickly shuffled papers when she saw my glance. "Just some household business," she said dismissively. Colleagues at Reynolds Innovation occasionally mentioned Wilson Tech Solutions in conversations, always with the awkward awareness that they were discussing my father's company. "I heard Wilson Tech lost the Berkshire Hospital contract," a sales manager mentioned during lunch. "Sorry, Blaze. I know that's your dad's company, right?" I maintain professional detachment in these moments. "Yes, but I'm not involved with their business. I haven't worked there." Diana Reynolds provided more direct perspective after a meeting where a potential client mentioned concerns about Wilson Tech's stability. "Family businesses can be particularly vulnerable to market shifts," she noted privately. "They often resist necessary changes to preserve legacy approaches. Is that something your father struggles with?" "We don't discuss business much," I replied, maintaining the separation I'd established years earlier. "But yes, he's always been resistant to changing successful formulas." As December arrived, Sophia urged me to prepare for potential family fallout from the business situation. "If things are as bad as they seem, your parents might lose significant assets," she pointed out pragmatically. "How would you feel if they needed help?" I had no simple answer. Years of resentment competed with lingering familial obligation. They made their choices about supporting me. "I'm not sure why I would owe them different treatment." "Because you're not them," Sophia replied simply. "You don't have to repeat their mistakes." Her wisdom resonated, but left me uncomfortable with its implications. Before I could resolve my conflicted feelings, my phone rang one evening in mid-December. Dad's name appeared on the screen, an unusual occurrence since our communications were typically limited to group family texts or brief conversations at gatherings. "Blaze," he said, his voice lacking its usual authoritative tone. "I need to speak with you. Privately. Can we meet tomorrow?" The request itself revealed how serious the situation must be. My father never needed anything from anyone, particularly not from the son he had pushed toward total self-reliance. "I can meet for lunch," I replied neutrally. "There's a restaurant near my office downtown." "Thank you," he said. 2 words I rarely heard from him. "Text me the details." "I'll be there." As I ended the call, I knew something fundamental had shifted in our family dynamic. My father needed something from me, and whatever it was, would irrevocably change our relationship. The restaurant I chose for our meeting was moderately priced, not the upscale establishments my father typically preferred, but also not deliberately modest. I arrived 15 minutes early, selecting a table in a quiet corner that would allow private conversation. Dad arrived precisely on time, another deviation from his usual pattern of arriving early to every appointment. The physical changes in him were subtle but significant. His tailored suit, always impeccably pressed, showed slight wrinkles. The designer watch he wore daily had been replaced by a simpler timepiece. Most telling was his demeanor. The confident posture and authoritative presence that had defined him throughout my life appeared diminished. "Thank you for meeting me, Blaze," he began after ordering just water, rather than his usual scotch. "I appreciate you making time." The formality and humility in his tone immediately confirmed my suspicions about the severity of his situation. Richard Wilson didn't express gratitude for expected behaviors, and he certainly didn't appear nervous when speaking to family members. After awkward small talk about the weather and my work, he finally addressed the reason for our meeting. "I imagine you've heard rumors about the company," he said, his voice lower. "The situation is challenging. I've seen some industry news I acknowledge neutrally. Hayes Consulting has been aggressive in your market space." He nodded, a flash of the old anger appearing momentarily. "Jackson Hayes has been poaching our clients with unsustainable pricing." But that's not the whole story. Over the next 20 minutes, my father outlined a business situation far more dire than public reports suggested. Wilson Tech Solutions had lost 40% of its contracts over 18 months. Cash reserves had been depleted, covering operational costs during the transition. 3 major clients were threatening to cancel their contracts due to concerns about the company's stability. Without immediate intervention, bankruptcy would become inevitable within 90 days. Thomas leaving was the final blow to client confidence, Dad admitted. He took his relationships and expertise elsewhere. I listened without interruption, maintaining professional composure while internally processing the scale of the disaster. This wasn't a temporary downturn. It was potential business extinction. Then came the request I hadn't anticipated. "Your work at Reynolds Innovation has gotten attention throughout the industry," Dad said, surprising me with his awareness of my professional accomplishments. "The materials process improvements, the cloud integration architecture, goal. You've developed exactly the kind of innovations Wilson Tech needs to remain competitive." He paused, clearly struggling with the next words. "I need your help, Blaze. Your technical expertise, your industry connections. I need you to help save the company." The moment felt surreal. After years of insisting I make my own way without family support, my father was explicitly asking for my professional assistance. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. Before I could respond, he added another revelation. "We've depleted most of our liquid assets, keeping the company afloat. The college fund we established for Harper's education took most of our emergency reserves." Harper's college fund, I repeated, the implications clear. The money that could have been split between both children's education. Dad had the decency to look uncomfortable. "We made different choices for each of you. I still believe self-reliance was an important lesson, but—" He hesitated. "I may have been overly rigid in applying it." This admission, the closest he'd ever come to acknowledging the unfairness of their approach, momentarily stunned me. Richard Wilson didn't admit mistakes, especially parenting ones. "The company can be saved," he continued, "but I need fresh expertise and innovation. Your expertise specifically." I maintained my composure, asking practical questions about the company's structure, remaining contracts, and technical capabilities. Dad answered each query with unusual transparency, revealing financial details he would typically consider private. When the lunch ended, I promised only to consider his request and discuss it with Sophia. The decision was too complex, too emotionally charged for an immediate response. Sophia listened intently that evening as I recounted the conversation. Her nursing training had enhanced her already substantial empathy, but she also maintained practical perspective. "This is a significant request with professional implications," she noted. "What would helping him mean for your position at Reynolds?" "Diana values cross-industry experience," I replied. "She might support limited consulting if I maintain my primary responsibilities. But that's the smaller consideration. The larger being whether you want to help the father who refused to help you." Sophia completed my thought. "Exactly. Part of me wants the vindication of saying no, of letting him experience the consequences of his choices the way he forced me to face mine." Sophia nodded. "That's completely understandable. But would that bring you peace, or just momentary satisfaction?" Her question cut to the heart of my internal conflict. Would refusing help simply perpetuate the cycle of withholding support? Would it make me more like the father I had resented? The following evening, I met Damon for drinks and sought his perspective as someone who had witnessed my college struggles firsthand. "Man, that's some karmic justice," Damon said, after hearing the situation. The guy who preached self-reliance now needs family bailout. That's one way to see it, I acknowledged. But you're considering helping anyway, Damon observed. Because you're not him. I'm considering it because refusing doesn't actually benefit me, I clarified. It would just hurt my mother and potentially affect family employees who depend on the business. Damon nodded thoughtfully. If you do help, though, make sure there's acknowledgement of what happened. Don't let him pretend the past inequality didn't exist. His advice resonated with my instinct that any assistance should come with conditions regarding family dynamics. Professor Jenkins provided yet another perspective when I called him the next day. Business failures and family relationships occupy different moral territories, he said thoughtfully. You can hold someone accountable for past actions while still offering assistance in present crisis. The question is whether you can separate the professional opportunity from the emotional history. His framing helped clarify my thinking. This wasn't simply about family obligation, but about my capacity to compartmentalize personal history from professional decisions. Before making any decision, I needed accurate information about Wilson Tech Solutions' actual condition. Using industry contacts and publicly available data, I conducted thorough research into the company's situation. The reality proved worse than my father had described. The company had outstanding tax liabilities that hadn't been mentioned. 3 key technical staff members were actively interviewing with competitors. Their main server infrastructure was dangerously outdated, creating security vulnerabilities for client data. Most critically, their service offerings had fallen behind industry standards by at least 2 technological generations. The situation would require not just incremental improvements, but comprehensive restructuring. My involvement would mean significant professional commitment and potential reputation risk if the rescue failed. Additional research revealed another concerning factor: my parents' home had been leveraged as collateral for business loans. If Wilson Tech Solutions failed, my mother would lose her home of 25 years. While I maintained limited emotional investment in my father's business success, the prospect of my mother facing housing insecurity at her age troubled me deeply. Harper remained oblivious to the severity of the situation. When I called to subtly gauge her awareness, she complained about Dad becoming weirdly cheap lately and mentioned he had asked her to start paying rent for the pool house, a request she found totally ridiculous after all these years. Have you been following Dad's business news at all? I asked directly. God, no. So boring, she replied dismissively. Business contracts whatever. I'm sure it's fine. It always is. Her complete detachment from family financial reality reinforced how differently we'd been prepared for adulthood. While I had been forced to understand financial management through necessity, she remained childlike in her expectation of perpetual support. After days of research and consultation, I faced the central question: could I help the father who had refused to help me? And if so, under what conditions? The professional challenge actually appealed to my problem-solving nature. The necessary innovations were within my capabilities, and restructuring a struggling technology business represented valuable experience. The family dynamics, however, required confronting decades of unresolved tension and inequality. I realized any sustainable solution would require addressing both aspects simultaneously. The business couldn't be saved without honest conversation about the family dynamics that had contributed to its current state. My father's management approach reflected the same rigid philosophy that had informed his parenting, an inflexible adherence to principle regardless of changing circumstances. After a week of consideration, I made my decision. I would offer assistance, but only after a frank family discussion about both the business situation and the history of unequal treatment. No more pretense. No more ignoring the elephant in the room. If Richard Wilson wanted my help saving his company, he would first need to acknowledge the cost of his character-building exercise. I called my father and requested a family meeting at their home that weekend. Everyone needs to understand the situation, I explained. Mom, Harper, everyone. And we need to discuss more than just business strategy. His hesitation revealed his discomfort with transparency, but desperation overrode preference. All right, he agreed reluctantly. Saturday evening. I'll make sure everyone's here. As I ended the call, I knew the upcoming conversation would permanently alter our family dynamic. Whether that change would heal old wounds or create new divisions remained to be seen. In preparation for the family meeting, I spent hours creating a detailed analysis of Wilson Tech Solutions' challenges and potential remedies. The presentation included comprehensive financial projections, technical architecture recommendations, and marketing strategy revisions. Professional thoroughness would demonstrate I was approaching this as a business matter rather than a family favor. Emotional preparation proved more challenging. Sophia helped me rehearse what needed to be said, encouraging clarity without accusation. Focus on specific behaviors and their impacts, not character judgments, she advised. And remember that the goal isn't punishment, but understanding and change. We arrived at my parents' house precisely at 6, the agreed time for our discussion. Mom greeted us with nervous energy, offering drinks and snacks with forced cheerfulness. Dad sat stiffly in his usual armchair, manila folders of business documents arranged on the coffee table before him. Harper arrived 20 minutes late, clearly annoyed at having her Saturday evening plans disrupted. "Sorry I'm late," she said. Not sounding sorry at all. "What's this big emergency meeting about anyway?" Dad cleared his throat. "Wilson Tech is facing significant challenges. Blaze has some expertise that might help, and we're going to discuss options." His framing immediately raised my hackles. The casual suggestion that I just happened to have relevant expertise rather than acknowledging he was specifically seeking my help. I took a deep breath, remembering Sophia's advice about focusing on outcomes rather than past grievances. Before we discuss technical solutions, I began opening my laptop. Everyone needs to understand the actual situation. Over the next 30 minutes, I methodically presented the company's position using facts and figures rather than subjective assessments. I outlined the contract losses, staff departures, technological deficiencies, and financial vulnerabilities without minimizing or exaggerating their severity. Throughout my presentation, Dad's expression shifted from defensive to resigned as he realized I had uncovered even more problems than he had acknowledged. Harper's shock became increasingly evident as the implications became clear. "Wait, so the company might actually go bankrupt," she interrupted. "Like for real, that doesn't happen to people like us." "It absolutely happens to people like us," I replied evenly. "Businesses fail every day regardless of the owner's self-perception." Mom sat quietly, her hands tightly clasped in her lap. "What about the house?" she finally asked, voicing her primary concern. "The house is at risk," I confirmed gently. "It was used as collateral for the business line of credit." This revelation visibly affected Harper for the first time. "We could lose the house. Where would I live?" The self-centered nature of her question highlighted how unprepared she remained for adult realities. Rather than addressing her directly, I continued with my assessment. "There are potential solutions," I explained, switching to the second part of my presentation. "The company has valuable client relationships and technical capabilities that could be leveraged differently. With strategic restructuring and technology upgrades, Wilson Tech Solutions could become competitive again." I outlined a 3-phase recovery plan involving immediate stabilization, technical modernization, and strategic repositioning. The plan would require significant changes to business operations, substantial capital investment, and technical expertise that the current staff lacked. "I have the technical knowledge to implement these changes," I concluded, "and potentially access to investors who might provide necessary capital. But my involvement would come with conditions." Dad leaned forward. "What conditions?" "First, complete transparency about all business operations and finances going forward. No hidden liabilities or sugar-coated status reports." He nodded reluctantly. "Second, operational authority to implement necessary technical changes without interference. My reputation would be on the line with any recommendations, so I need control over implementation." Another nod, this one more hesitant. "Third, and most importantly," I continued, making direct eye contact, acknowledgement, and discussion of the family dynamics that contributed to this situation. The room fell silent. This condition clearly caught him off guard. "What do family dynamics have to do with business operations?" he asked defensively. "Everything," I replied firmly. "The same rigid thinking that led you to completely cut off college support for me while fully funding Harper created business blind spots. The same unwillingness to adapt that kept you from acknowledging the unfairness of that decision kept you from adapting to changing technology trends. We can't fix the business without addressing the thinking patterns that damaged it. The directness of my assessment visibly unsettled him. Mom looked down at her hands while Harper shifted uncomfortably on the sofa. That was different, Dad began. The decisions about college were about preparing each of you appropriately. They were about applying completely different standards to your children based on gender stereotypes. I interrupted, my voice remaining calm but firm. And now we're seeing the results of those different preparations. I developed resilience and technical skills through necessity. Harper never had to develop financial independence. Harper's face flushed. That's not fair. I work hard. You work at an entry-level position that Dad's connections secured, I pointed out. You live rent-free in the pool house. You've never experienced actual financial hardship or independence. Blaze, Mom interjected, we thought we were doing what was best for both of you. By creating entirely different rules and expectations. By funding one child's education completely, while abandoning the other to work 3 jobs just to stay in school. The room fell silent again before Dad responded with unexpected defensiveness. You succeeded, didn't you? You've done well for yourself. Our approach clearly worked. This response ignited a flash of anger I had suppressed for years. I succeeded despite your approach, not because of it. Do you have any idea what those years cost me? The opportunities lost because I had to work. Instead of focusing on education, the health impacts of sleep deprivation and stress, the relationships damaged because I had no time for anything but work and study. My voice remained controlled, but carried the weight of accumulated resentment. I succeeded because I refused to fail, not because your lesson had merit. And now you're asking me to use the skills I developed through that unnecessary hardship to rescue you from the consequences of your own rigid thinking. Dad stood abruptly and paced toward the window, clearly uncomfortable with direct confrontation about his parenting decisions. Mom's eyes filled with tears as she finally found her voice. Blaze is right, Richard, she said quietly. We treated them differently, and it wasn't fair. I should have said something years ago. Her unexpected support shifted the emotional atmosphere in the room. For perhaps the first time, someone else in the family was acknowledging the reality I had experienced. Harper's initial defensiveness began giving way to genuine reflection. I never really thought about it that way, she admitted reluctantly. I just accepted what was offered without questioning why you didn't get the same support. Dad remained at the window back, partially turned to the room. His posture radiated discomfort and resistance to this conversation. The past can't be changed, he finally said. What's done is done. True, I agreed. But without acknowledgement of past mistakes, there's no foundation for moving forward differently. I'm not asking for compensation or apologies. I'm asking for honest recognition of the different standards applied to your children and commitment to more equitable treatment going forward. The silence stretched uncomfortably before Dad turned back to face me. His expression showed the internal conflict between pride and necessity. In that moment, I recognized that my father, for all his confident pronouncements and rigid principles, was simply a flawed human, struggling with his own limitations. I believed I was preparing you for a challenging world, he said finally. Men face different expectations than women. That's just sexist, Dad, Harper interjected surprisingly. And it's not even true anymore. Her comment seemed to pierce his certainty more effectively than my arguments had. He looked at her with genuine surprise. You think I was wrong? He asked her directly. Yes, she replied simply. Blaze shouldn't have had to struggle so much when I got everything handed to me. It wasn't fair. Her acknowledgement visibly affected him. Perhaps hearing it from the child who had benefited from the inequality carried more weight than protests from the one who had suffered. Mom reached for his hand as he sank back into his chair. Richard, we need to make this right. Not just for the business, but for our family. The emotional breakthrough I had never expected to witness unfolded gradually over the next hour. Dad's defenses crumbled incrementally as Mom and Harper continued supporting my perspective. His admission came haltingly in pieces rather than a grand apology, but the substance emerged nonetheless. I applied different standards, he finally acknowledged. And in retrospect, some of those differences were Excessive. Unnecessarily harsh. From Richard Wilson, this qualified admission represented significant movement. I felt a complex mixture of vindication relief and lingering resentment. With that understanding, I said, bringing focus back to the immediate crisis, I'm willing to help restructure Wilson Tech Solutions under the conditions I've outlined. As the emotional intensity subsided, we turned to practical matters of business recovery. Harper surprised me by asking thoughtful questions about her potential role in the restructuring. I've never really understood what the company does, she admitted. But maybe it's time I learned. Could I help with marketing or client communications? Her willingness to engage meaningfully with family responsibilities represented its own form of growth. By meeting's end, we had established preliminary agreements about business intervention and family dynamics. The conversation hadn't resolved decades of unequal treatment, but it had created an opening for healing previously blocked by denial and defensiveness. As Sophia and I prepared to leave, Dad approached me privately in the hallway. I was wrong, he said simply. Not about everything, but about how differently we treated you and your sister. I'm sorry. The words I never expected to hear from him hung in the air between us. Neither of us knew how to navigate this unfamiliar territory of vulnerability and acknowledgement. Thank you for saying that, I replied finally. It matters. We had taken the first tentative steps toward a new family dynamic, one based on mutual respect rather than arbitrary authority. Whether this foundation would support lasting change remained to be seen, but the possibility now existed where none had before. Implementing the rescue plan for Wilson Tech Solutions began immediately. Using my technical expertise and industry connections, I developed a comprehensive strategy, focusing first on stabilizing existing client relationships. My analysis had identified technological vulnerabilities that, once addressed, would significantly improve service reliability for current customers. Diana Reynolds proved unexpectedly supportive when I explained the situation. Family businesses have unique challenges, she acknowledged. I can approve 20% of your time for this project over the next quarter provided your primary responsibilities remain covered. Her flexibility allowed me to maintain my position at Reynolds Innovation while providing critical assistance to Wilson Tech. The arrangement offered professional boundaries that helped separate business intervention from family dynamics. Through contacts developed at technology conferences, I located potential investors interested in family business turnarounds. 2 meetings yielded a commitment for bridge financing that would prevent immediate bankruptcy while we implemented structural changes. The investment came with stringent oversight requirements, exactly the accountability the company needed. Technological innovations formed the core of the recovery strategy. The outdated server infrastructure received comprehensive upgrades, implementing cloud-based solutions I had helped develop at Reynolds. Client data security improved dramatically, addressing a primary concern that had driven recent contract losses. New service packages incorporating machine learning capabilities positioned the company as forward-thinking rather than struggling to catch up. Throughout this process, the most surprising development was Harper's engagement with the family business. After years of casual disinterest, she committed to learning actual business operations. Her marketing degree, previously underutilized in her entry-level position, provided relevant skills for communicating the company's transformation to clients and industry partners. I never realized how complex Dad's business was, she admitted during a strategy session. I just assumed everything ran itself while he collected profits. Her growing understanding of business realities paralleled her recognition of her privileged position within the family. She voluntarily moved from the pool house to an apartment she shared with 2 friends, paying rent from her own salary without parental subsidy. It's weird having to budget for everything, she told me over coffee one morning, but also satisfying somehow, like I'm finally an actual adult. Dad struggled most visibly with the shifting family power dynamic. Accustomed to unquestioned authority in both business and family matters, he found himself in the unaccustomed position of following another's lead. Initial resistance manifested in questioning technical decisions and suggesting alternative approaches based on outdated information. We've always managed server infrastructure in-house, he argued during an early implementation meeting. Outsourcing to cloud services creates dependencies. It also reduces capital expenditure. improves scalability, and transfers security responsibilities to specialized providers, I countered, maintaining professional tone. The industry has moved in this direction for sound reasons. Gradually, as initial changes demonstrated positive results, his resistance diminished. Watching client satisfaction metrics improve and seeing former clients express renewed interest provided tangible validation of the new approach. His grudging respect evolved into genuine appreciation as the company's prospects brightened. The cloud migration was absolutely the right call, he acknowledged, after quarterly metrics showed 30% improvement in service reliability. You saw possibilities I was too stuck in tradition to recognize. Mom's relationship with me strengthened as she observed the business transformation. Regular coffee meetings became opportunities for honest conversation about family history and her own role in maintaining unequal treatment. I should have advocated for you more strongly, she admitted during one such conversation. I knew the different expectations weren't fair, but I convinced myself your father knew best. Why didn't you ever push back? I asked, genuinely curious about her passive acceptance. My own parents had very traditional views about gender roles, she explained. I was raised to believe men controlled financial decisions and women focused on home and children. It wasn't right, but it was deeply ingrained. These conversations helped me understand the generational and cultural context that had shaped our family dynamics without excusing their impacts. Mom's willingness to examine her choices offered its own form of healing. Business recovery proceeded more rapidly than initially projected. By the 6-month mark, Wilson Tech Solutions had regained 2 major lost clients and acquired 3 new ones attracted by innovative service offerings. Staff morale improved as financial stability returned, reducing turnover and attracting new talent interested in the company's rejuvenation. The wedding preparations for Sophia and me continued amid these professional developments. With the business stabilizing and family relationships improving, my parents unexpectedly offered financial contribution toward wedding expenses. We know you've planned everything independently, Mom said when presenting their offer, but we'd like to help if you're open to it. The gesture represented more than financial assistance. It acknowledged our relationship deserved the same support freely given to Harper throughout her life. After consideration, Sophia and I accepted their contribution for the reception venue, an acceptance that itself marked personal growth in my ability to receive family support without resentment. Harper matured significantly through her increasing business responsibilities. Her natural social skills translated effectively to client relationship management, and she developed genuine interest in technology applications after understanding their business impact. Most importantly, she began recognizing advantages she had taken for granted. I can't believe I complained about having to pay for my own manicures while you were working security shifts overnight just to stay in school, she said during a rare siblings-only dinner. I was so oblivious. The improved sibling relationship represented unexpected healing. While we would never share the easy closeness of some siblings, mutual respect replaced the tension and resentment that had characterized our adult relationship. As the 1-year mark of the business intervention approached, Wilson Tech Solutions had stabilized financially and begun modest growth. Dad publicly acknowledged my role during the company's annual client appreciation event, a gesture previously unimaginable from a man who rarely credited others' contributions. Wilson Tech's transformation over the past year reflects the innovative vision brought by my son Blaze, he stated during his address. His technical expertise and fresh perspective have revitalized our services and strengthened our client relationships. The public acknowledgement reflected private change, a father learning to value his son's contributions after years of dismissing his needs. While our relationship maintained healthy professional boundaries, personal interactions became increasingly comfortable. The rigid authority figure gradually gave way to a more authentic, vulnerable human being capable of admitting mistakes and expressing genuine appreciation. Sophia and I married in a ceremony that balanced intimacy with celebration. Family and friends from both our lives gathered to witness our commitment, including Professor Jenkins Damon and Diana Reynolds. The event symbolized not just our union, but the integration of my personal and professional worlds after years of compartmentalization. During the father-son dance at the reception, Dad spoke quietly. You created your own path when I refused to support the one you wanted. That took courage I didn't appreciate until recently. It took stubbornness I corrected with a slight smile. Another trait I apparently inherited. His answering laugh acknowledged the truth in my observation. Fair point, though you've learned to balance principle with flexibility better than I managed. That conversation captured the essence of our evolving relationship. Acknowledgement of past differences, alongside recognition of shared traits and mutual respect. The business continued improving under the new approach, with Harper taking increasing responsibility for client development while I provided ongoing technical consultation. Dad gradually shifted towards strategic advisory role rather than day-to-day management, a transition that suited both the company's needs and his personal strengths. 2 years after the initial crisis, Wilson Tech Solutions had not only recovered, but expanded into new market segments. The company that nearly collapsed had transformed into a regional leader in technology integration services with modernized offerings and management approaches. More important than the business recovery was the family healing it facilitated. We had moved from rigid roles and unquestioned inequality to more authentic relationships based on mutual respect and acknowledgement of individual strengths. The crisis that threatened financial stability ultimately strengthened family bonds by forcing honest conversation about long-standing patterns. The journey from resentful independence to collaborative strength taught me that true independence isn't about rejecting support, but about having the wisdom to know when to offer and accept it. The forced self-reliance that began as punishment became genuine strength, while the lesson my father intended took unexpected form, teaching him as much as it taught me about what really matters in family relationships. Have you ever faced a situation where family inequality later reversed in an unexpected way? Drop a comment below sharing your experience. The journey from hardship to growth often reveals surprising lessons about ourselves and those closest to us. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that sometimes life's unfairness creates the very strength needed to overcome greater challenges. Thank you for joining me for this deeply personal story. And remember that true success isn't measured by what you achieve alone, but by how you help others along the way.